Have you ever heard of Benaiah? His name may not immediately ring a bell like Moses and David or Elijah, yet his story is one of the most extraordinary in the Bible. A man of unshakable faith, immense courage, and unmatched loyalty, Benaiah stood out among King David's mighty men as a warrior of remarkable deeds. From slaying a lion in a snowy pit to confronting a towering Egyptian giant, his life was a testimony to what happens when faith fuels every step. But who was this man? And why does his story still speak to us today? To understand Benaiah's significance, it's essential to step into the world of ancient Israel during the reign of King David. This was a time of both triumph and turmoil. Israel was expanding as a nation, but threats loomed from every side. Neighboring nations like the Philistines, Moabites, and Edomites often waged war against Israel, and internal challenges like Absalom's rebellion threatened the kingdom's stability. Warriors like Benaiah were more than soldiers. They were protectors of a divine covenant. They defended not only their nation but also God's promises. In this environment, Benaiah emerged as a man whose identity was rooted in his unwavering trust in Yahweh. Before we continue, I want to ask you to leave a like on the video to support us. And if you enjoy this kind of content, subscribe to the channel and also click the notification bell. God bless you. One of the most captivating moments in Benaiah's story is his encounter with a lion in a snowy pit, described in the second book of Samuel, chapter 23. Let's unpack this. Snow was an uncommon event in many parts of Israel, making this not just a physical challenge, but a test of resilience in harsh and unusual conditions. A lion, a ferocious predator, and a symbol of raw power, represented a nearly insurmountable threat. And yet, Benaiah willingly entered that pit. Why? In ancient cultures, lions were often seen as symbols of chaos, destruction, and fear, much like the challenges we face today. For Benaiah, this was not just a battle of strength. It was a demonstration of faith over fear. But what was this pit, and why was it significant? In the culture of ancient Israel, pits were often used as water reservoirs or traps for animals, essential for survival in arid regions. To defend such a critical resource, especially during snowy conditions, was an act of great courage. The Bible doesn't tell us why Benaiah faced this lion, but the details suggest it wasn't random. Perhaps it was an act of protection for his community, or a challenge he felt called to confront. Whatever the reason, this battle was more than a physical triumph. It was a spiritual metaphor. As the first letter of Peter, chapter 5 and verse 8, reminds us, the devil prowls like a roaring lion, seeking to devour. Benaiah's story shows us that with God's strength, even the fiercest adversaries can be overcome. Benaiah's preparation for such feats wasn't accidental. His training likely combined physical discipline with spiritual devotion. As a member of David's elite warriors, he was among a group known as the 30, a select band of mighty men celebrated for their extraordinary courage. Yet, even within this prestigious group, Benaiah stood out. His deeds placed him alongside the three, an even higher rank of warriors who performed legendary acts. This elevation wasn't just about skill, it reflected a character deeply rooted in loyalty to God and his anointed king. It's worth noting that his upbringing, his faith, and his dedication to service played a crucial role in preparing him for such moments of greatness. So, how does this connect to us? The lion in the pit can represent the overwhelming challenges we face, whether it's a health crisis, a broken relationship, or a career setback. The snow symbolizes the unexpected complications that make life's battles even harder. Benaiah's story invites us to confront these challenges head-on, armed with faith that God is with us. It reminds us of the words in the book of Psalms, chapter 18, verse 29. With my God, I can scale a wall. His story challenges us to see obstacles not as reasons to retreat, but as opportunities to rely on God's strength. Benaiah's life is a timeless blueprint for courage, faith, and resilience. But where did this strength come from? What shaped him into the warrior who could face lions and giants without fear? Let's take a step back and explore his roots, his family, and the God-given identity that set him on this extraordinary path. Who was Benaiah before he became a hero of faith and one of King David's most trusted warriors? To truly understand his courage and loyalty, we must explore his roots, where his identity in God was formed. Benaiah's early life, shaped by his family, his name, and the culture of ancient Israel, reveals the foundation that prepared him to face lions, giants, and overwhelming odds. His story reminds us that greatness often begins in the quiet moments of preparation. Benaiah was the son of Jehoiada, a priest of Israel, a lineage that carries profound spiritual and cultural significance. In ancient Israel, priests were more than religious leaders. They were mediators between God and his people, responsible for teaching the law, maintaining worship, and often advising rulers. Jehoiada's influence on Benaiah would have gone far beyond spiritual matters. Growing up in a priestly household, Benaiah would have been steeped in the teachings of the Torah, hearing the stories of God's deliverance and promises to Israel. This spiritual heritage likely laid the groundwork for his unshakable faith and trust in Yahweh. His name, Benaiah, meaning Yahweh has built, offers a glimpse into the divine purpose embedded in his life. Names in the Hebrew tradition often carried prophetic weight, reflecting the character or destiny of the individual. Just as Abram became Abraham, meaning father of many nations, and Jacob became Israel, meaning one who struggles with God, Benaiah's name declared that his life would be a testament to God's work. His story is a living illustration of this truth. Every battle he faced and every victory he achieved was not by his own strength, but through the foundation God had built in him. It's worth pausing to consider how Benaiah transitioned from the son of a priest to a celebrated warrior. While the Bible doesn't detail his military training, it's likely that his role as a defender of Israel emerged from the unique challenges of David's reign. This was an era of constant conflict, where every able-bodied man was expected to contribute to the nation's security. Even priests and their families would have been drawn into the defense of their people. Benaiah's dual heritage, spiritual instruction from his father, and the military demands of his era, uniquely equipped him to bridge the gap between faith and action. His ability to wield both the sword and the word was no coincidence, but a reflection of God's preparation. The role of Jehoiada also carries a deeper cultural weight. Priests in Israel weren't just confined to the temple, they were often involved in political and military affairs. For instance, Jehoiada's priestly role likely involved advising leaders, mediating disputes, and maintaining the nation's moral compass. As a young man, Benaiah would have observed his father's leadership and learned the value of loyalty, not just to a king, but to God's anointed. This upbringing explains why Benaiah later became one of David's most faithful supporters, even amid political turmoil and rebellion. Benaiah's early life reminds us that God often builds our character long before we face our greatest challenges. His upbringing in a priestly home, his exposure to both spiritual and practical training, and even his name speak of a life prepared for a higher purpose. What about us? How are our own lives being shaped by the influences around us, our family, faith, and the challenges we face? Just as Benaiah's preparation was rooted in obedience to God, so too are we called to let God build our foundation for the battles ahead. This legacy of preparation becomes evident as we move forward in his story. From the foundations laid in his early years, Benaiah would later demonstrate his faith in action, most famously in the snowy pit with the lion. Let's explore how this incredible moment showcases the fruit of a life built on trust in Yahweh. Imagine standing face to face with a lion in the dead of winter with snow blanketing the ground. The air is icy, the ground slippery, and your footing uncertain. Now imagine willingly stepping into a pit to confront that beast. This is not the plot of a movie. It's the real-life story of Benaiah, as recorded in the second book of Samuel, chapter 23. What kind of man takes on such a challenge? What was he protecting? And what does this act of courage teach us about faith and preparation? To understand this iconic moment, let's start with the setting. Lions in ancient Israel were not just symbols. They were real, ferocious predators that posed a direct threat to communities. They attacked livestock and sometimes people, making them a danger that had to be addressed. But this wasn't a typical lion encounter. The Bible tells us it happened on a snowy day, a rare occurrence in Israel's mostly arid climate. Snow complicated the situation, making the ground slippery and the pit more treacherous. This detail is more than a description. It underscores the near impossibility of the feat. The conditions magnified the challenge, showing that this was no ordinary battle, but a test of both physical and spiritual endurance. Now, consider the pit. In ancient cultures, pits were often used as traps for dangerous animals or as water reservoirs, vital for survival in dry regions. A lion trapped in such a place was still a deadly threat, but ignoring it could endanger entire communities. Spiritually, pits in the Bible often represent places of decision or trial. Think of Joseph, thrown into a pit by his brothers, Genesis decries capítulo 37, or Jeremiah, cast into a cistern, Jeremiah decries capítulo 38. These pits symbolize moments of testing where faith is either strengthened or falters. Benaiah's choice to descend into this pit, despite the snow and the lion, reveals a man who trusted not in circumstances, but in God's power to overcome. Why would Benaiah take such a risk? Although the Bible doesn't give a direct answer, it's likely that his actions were motivated by responsibility. As a leader and protector, he may have been guarding his community's safety. Lions often symbolize chaos and destruction, and removing this threat could have been essential for the survival of his people. But there's a deeper spiritual symbolism here. In the first letter of Peter, chapter 5, verse 8, we read that the devil prowls like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Benaiah's physical battle mirrors the spiritual battles we face daily. The snowy pit becomes a metaphor for life's most daunting challenges, moments when the odds seem stacked against us, yet we are called to act in faith. Benaiah's victory wasn't accidental. He was prepared. As one of King David's mighty men, he had honed his skills through years of training and discipline, but his preparation wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. A man who grew up steeped in the teachings of Yahweh knew that ultimate strength comes from God. This truth is echoed in the book of Psalms, capítulo 18, versículo 29. With my God, I can scale a wall. Preparation and trust in God went hand in hand for Benaiah, allowing him to step boldly into a situation others might avoid. The story also challenges us to reflect on our own lions and pits. What are the challenges we face that seem insurmountable? The lion could be a health diagnosis, a financial crisis, or a broken relationship. The snow could represent unexpected complications that make the situation even harder. And the pit? It's the place where we must confront the challenge directly, without escape. Benaiah's story reminds us that these moments, while terrifying, are opportunities to see God's strength at work in us. Just as Benaiah prepared, we too must be ready, studying God's word, praying for guidance, and stepping out in faith when the moment comes. But Benaiah's story doesn't end in the pit. His encounter with the lion was just one chapter of a life filled with extraordinary acts of courage. One of his greatest challenges was facing a giant Egyptian warrior, an event that tested not only his skill, but also his trust in God. Let's explore this next defining moment in the life of a faithful warrior. Imagine standing against an enemy who towers over you, armed with a spear so massive it feels like an impossible match. This was Benaiah's reality when he faced the Egyptian giant, a battle described no less than in the second book of Samuel, chapter 23. Armed with nothing but a staff, Benaiah didn't just survive this encounter, he triumphed, disarming his opponent and defeating him with his own weapon. This moment of courage and strategy holds powerful lessons about facing overwhelming challenges with faith and wisdom. Let's first explore the context. In the ancient Near East, giants like the Egyptian warrior were not just physical anomalies. They symbolized power, dominance, and invincibility. Egypt itself carried a long history of representing oppression to Israel, dating back to their enslavement and the Exodus. For a man of Israel to defeat an Egyptian giant wasn't just a personal victory. It was a symbolic act of God's power, triumphing over human strength and oppression. This parallels earlier stories, such as David defeating Goliath, proving that the size of the adversary never surpasses the power of God working through the faithful. Now consider the weapons. Benaiah faced a warrior armed with a spear, while he carried only a staff, a weapon of shepherds, not soldiers. The Bible doesn't explain why Benaiah chose such a modest weapon, but it's clear that he relied not on the size of his arsenal, but on the wisdom God had given him. He used his staff to disarm the Egyptian, turning the enemy's weapon against him. This act reminds us of the principle found in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. It's a testament to how God can use the small and seemingly insignificant to accomplish great victories. Benaiah's strategy also highlights the importance of preparation and adaptability. He didn't charge recklessly. He used the tools he had with precision and wisdom. This teaches us that facing life's giants isn't just about bravery, it's about being equipped both spiritually and mentally. The book of Ephesians, chapter 6, verse 10, calls us to be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power, using the armor of God to fight our battles. Benaiah exemplifies this spiritual and practical preparation, showing that trust in God and skill go hand in hand. But what about the giants we face today? They might not be literal warriors, but they can be just as intimidating. A financial crisis, a debilitating illness, or a relationship falling apart. The Egyptian's spear represents the overwhelming odds stacked against us. And Benaiah's staff reminds us that victory doesn't come from matching the enemy's strength, but from trusting in God's ability to equip us for the fight. Like Benaiah, we can turn our challenges into opportunities to glorify God by stepping out in faith and using the resources he has provided. Benaiah's victory over the Egyptian giant wasn't just another battle, it was a testament to his unwavering loyalty to God and his anointed king, David. In a time of political upheaval and rebellion, this loyalty would become one of Benaiah's defining traits. Let's dive deeper into how his steadfast faithfulness made him a key figure in one of the most tumultuous periods of Israel's history. In times of crisis, loyalty is tested, and Benaiah's unwavering faithfulness to King David shines as a testament to his character. His commitment wasn't rooted in blind allegiance, but in a profound understanding of God's sovereignty and the spiritual authority of David's kingship. During an era marked by rebellion, intrigue, and political upheaval, Benaiah's steadfast loyalty played a crucial role in preserving the stability of Israel and fulfilling God's plan. His actions reveal what it means to stand firm in faith and conviction, even when the stakes are high. David's reign, though divinely ordained, was far from smooth. Internally, his rule faced threats like the rebellion of his son Absalom, who sought to overthrow him, forcing David to flee Jerusalem. Externally, the kingdom was under constant attack from surrounding nations like the Philistines and Moabites. In such a volatile environment, remaining loyal to the king required not only courage, but also spiritual discernment. Benaiah's allegiance to David was grounded in his understanding that David was God's chosen leader. His loyalty was ultimately a reflection of his trust in Yahweh's plan, even when circumstances appeared uncertain. One pivotal moment that tested Benaiah's loyalty occurred during the rebellion of Adonijah, as recorded in the first book of Kings, chapter 1. Adonijah, another of David's sons, sought to seize the throne as David's health declined, even though God had appointed Solomon as the next king. Adonijah gathered support from influential figures, creating a potential civil war. However, Benaiah stood firmly with Solomon, recognizing that the throne was not a matter of politics, but of divine ordination. He played a key role in Solomon's anointing, ensuring that God's plan prevailed over human ambition. This act of loyalty positioned Benaiah as a defender of righteousness and stability in a critical moment for Israel. Benaiah's loyalty extended beyond mere allegiance. It was an active commitment to protect God's anointed leaders. During the rebellion of Absalom, for instance, David faced betrayal from close allies and family members, yet men like Benaiah remained steadfast, ensuring David's safety and helping to restore order. Loyalty like this wasn't just about personal devotion, it was a spiritual act, a recognition that standing with God's chosen leader was equivalent to standing with God himself. This principle challenges us today to consider how we respond when our commitments are tested. Do we remain faithful to our values and responsibilities even when it's inconvenient or risky? In our modern lives, loyalty is often undervalued, but Benaiah's story reminds us of its enduring importance. Whether it's staying faithful to a friend in need, honoring commitments in marriage, or upholding integrity in the workplace, loyalty reflects God's faithfulness to us. For example, standing by a struggling colleague at work, supporting a family member facing challenges, or remaining committed to a ministry role. Despite obstacles are all ways we can embody this principle. Benaiah's life encourages us to act with courage and conviction, even when loyalty comes at a cost. Benaiah's steadfastness not only earned him David's trust, but also elevated him to a position of great influence under Solomon. His loyalty wasn't born from personal ambition, but from a deep trust in God, which empowered him to act decisively and faithfully. But what was the source of this loyalty and strength? Let's explore how Benaiah's trust in God became the foundation for his extraordinary life of faith and courage. What gave Benaiah the strength to face lions, giants, and political turmoil with such fearless resolve? The secret to his courage wasn't merely in his physical training or innate bravery. It lay in the depth of his trust in God. Benaiah's life illustrates a timeless truth. True strength comes not from our abilities alone, but from placing our confidence in the one who empowers us to face any challenge. Benaiah's trust in God wasn't theoretical. It was a lived and tested reality. As the son of Jehoiada, a priest, Benaiah grew up immersed in the scriptures and the stories of Yahweh's faithfulness to his people. He likely internalized passages like the book of Joshua, chapter 1, verse 9. "Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." These teachings laid a foundation of faith that enabled Benaiah to act with courage in the most daunting circumstances, from descending into a snowy pit to face a lion to standing firm in support of God's chosen king, David. But Benaiah's strength wasn't just spiritual, it was also practical. As a member of David's mighty men, he would have undergone rigorous physical and military training. He honed his skills on the battlefield, becoming a master of strategy and combat. Yet what set Benaiah apart wasn't just his training, it was his recognition that his victories came from God. He embodied the principle found in the book of Psalms, chapter 18, verse 2. "The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock, in whom I take refuge." This combination of preparation and trust is what enabled him to achieve extraordinary feats, such as disarming the Egyptian giant with his own weapon. This divine source of strength gave Benaiah the courage to face challenges that others would have fled. When he entered the pit to confront the lion, he didn't do so with arrogance or recklessness, but with a quiet confidence rooted in God's provision. This confidence is a reminder to us today. When we face our own lions and giants, whether they are health crises, financial struggles, or relational conflicts, we can draw from the same well of strength. Benaiah's actions teach us that faith in God isn't passive. It's an active trust that compels us to prepare, act, and believe in his deliverance. Moreover, Benaiah's reliance on God wasn't limited to battles. His unwavering loyalty to David, even in times of political uncertainty, reflected his belief that God's plans would prevail. This steadfastness challenges us to consider our own faith. Do we trust God when circumstances seem insurmountable? Are we willing to stand firm when our convictions are tested? Benaiah's life reminds us that spiritual strength is cultivated through consistent trust in God's promises, even when the outcome is unclear. Ultimately, Benaiah's strength wasn't about physical might or personal ambition, it was about faith in action. This faith, developed through years of preparation and reliance on God, became the foundation of his extraordinary life. It's a powerful reminder that God equips those who trust in him, enabling them to achieve far more than they could on their own. His life challenges us to ask, how are we preparing ourselves spiritually and practically for the challenges we face? And are we trusting God to be our source of strength? Benaiah's story offers us a blueprint for living with courage and faith. Next, let's draw practical lessons from his life and explore how we can apply them in our own journey to overcome challenges and live boldly for God. Benaiah's story is much more than a historical account of courage and faith. It is a guide for navigating life's challenges with purpose and confidence in God. From his fearless actions to his steadfast trust in God's plan, Benaiah teaches us timeless principles that can transform the way we approach our own battles. Let's delve deeper into the lessons his life offers and how we can apply them in practical ways. One of the most powerful lessons from Benaiah's life is the courage to face overwhelming odds. Consider his decision to chase a lion into a snowy pit. This wasn't a reckless act. It was a calculated step, rooted in confidence that God would deliver him. The snow, symbolizing unpredictable complications, made the battle even harder. Yet, Benaiah didn't retreat. This moment reminds us that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about trusting God more than we fear the challenge. For someone facing a daunting situation, like an intimidating job interview or a personal loss, Benaiah's story is a reminder to step forward in faith, knowing that God equips us for every battle. Benaiah's victories weren't accidents, they were the result of preparation. As one of David's mighty men, he trained rigorously in combat and strategy, refining the skills he needed for the battlefield. But his preparation went beyond the physical. He was spiritually fortified through his trust in Yahweh. This dual preparation teaches us the importance of combining diligence with dependence on God. For instance, a student preparing for exams can study hard while praying for clarity and focus. Or a professional preparing for a big presentation can practice while trusting God for confidence. It's a reminder that while we prepare for the battle, the ultimate victory comes from the Lord. Another defining trait of Benaiah was his unwavering loyalty and integrity. During times of political turmoil, such as the rebellion of Adonijah, Benaiah stood firm by Solomon, the rightful king appointed by God. His loyalty was not based on personal gain, but on doing what was right in God's eyes. This challenges us to examine our own commitments. Are we loyal in our relationships, honest in our workplaces, and faithful in our ministries, even when it's inconvenient or costly? For example, standing by a friend who is struggling, refusing to compromise your values at work, or remaining committed to a task despite challenges are modern ways to embody this principle. Benaiah's life also demonstrates the importance of faith in action. He didn't just believe in God's power, he acted on that belief. Whether it was stepping into the pit with a lion or disarming a giant Egyptian warrior, Benaiah's actions were a testament to his trust in God's promises. Faith, as Scripture teaches, is not passive. It requires us to step forward even when the path is unclear. This might mean pursuing a calling that feels out of reach, reconciling with someone after years of conflict, or simply taking the next small step in a daunting journey. Benaiah's faith reminds us that every action we take in trust opens the door for God's power to work through us. Finally, Benaiah's story teaches us how to overcome fear. His willingness to confront a lion and a giant wasn't because he lacked fear, but because he trusted in God's strength more than his own limitations. This is a lesson for anyone feeling paralyzed by anxiety or doubt. When faced with the giants of life, health crises, financial struggles, or fractured relationships, we can draw strength from God's promise to be with us. Just as Benaiah relied on God's provision, we too can find the courage to face our challenges head-on. Benaiah's life is a blueprint for living boldly and faithfully. His courage, preparation, loyalty, faith, and ability to overcome fear serve as timeless examples of how to trust God in every aspect of life. But how do these principles play out in the struggles we face today? Let's explore how to face modern-day challenges with the same boldness and faith that defined Benaiah's extraordinary journey. The story of Benaiah is more than a historical account. It is a blueprint for conquering the giants we face in our modern lives. While we may not be facing lions in pits or spear-wielding warriors, our challenges are no less real. They take the form of financial struggles, health crises, relational conflicts, or even battles with our own fears and insecurities. The lessons we learn from Benaiah's life can empower us to face these challenges with courage, preparation, and unwavering faith. Benaiah's first lesson is the power of perspective. When he faced the lion in the snowy pit or the Egyptian giant, he didn't allow the size of the challenge to overwhelm him. Instead, he trusted in the greatness of his God. Perspective transforms how we approach problems. A financial crisis may feel like a giant, but when we remember that God is our provider, it shifts our focus from the problem to the one who holds the solution. Similarly, facing a health diagnosis or a relational breakdown becomes manageable when we trust in God's promises to be with us. Benaiah teaches us that courage starts with seeing our challenges in light of God's power, not our limitations. Preparation is another key principle we can draw from Benaiah's life. His victories weren't accidental. They were the result of rigorous training and spiritual grounding. As one of David's mighty men, Benaiah honed his skills in combat and strategy, ensuring he was ready for any battle. But his preparation didn't stop at the physical. He relied on a deep spiritual foundation, built through trust in Yahweh. Modern preparation mirrors this dual approach. Facing a career challenge might mean gaining the necessary skills while praying for guidance. Confronting relational difficulties might involve seeking counseling, while committing to forgiveness through prayer. Preparation is about doing our part while trusting God to do His. Faith in action is another hallmark of Benaiah's life. He didn't just believe in God's power, he acted on it. Whether it was jumping into the pit with the lion or disarming the Egyptian giant, Benaiah's actions reflected his trust in God. This teaches us that faith isn't passive, it requires bold steps. In our lives, faith in action might look like taking a leap toward a new career, initiating reconciliation in a broken relationship, or stepping into a leadership role despite feelings of inadequacy. Faith calls us to act, even when the outcome is uncertain, trusting God to guide and strengthen us. Fear is often the greatest obstacle to facing our challenges. Benaiah's willingness to confront a lion and a giant wasn't because he was fearless. It was because he trusted God more than he feared the circumstances. Fear, left unchecked, paralyzes us. Benaiah's life teaches us to acknowledge our fears, but not be ruled by them. Overcoming fear begins with surrendering it to God through prayer, meditating on scriptures that remind us of His faithfulness, and seeking support from a community of faith. Just as Benaiah found strength in God's presence, we too can face our giants with courage when we rely on His promises. Finally, Benaiah's unwavering loyalty to God's plan reminds us of the importance of staying committed to what matters most. In a world filled with distractions and shifting priorities, his example challenges us to remain steadfast in our relationships, responsibilities, and faith. Staying true to our commitments might mean standing by a loved one during a difficult season, showing integrity at work despite pressure, or remaining faithful to our spiritual disciplines when life feels chaotic. Giants will come, but with God's strength, we can stay on course and emerge victorious. Benaiah's story is a testament to what God can do through someone who trusts Him completely. His life reminds us that, no matter the size of our challenges, God is greater. But how do we cultivate this kind of boldness and faith in our own lives? Let's uncover the timeless principles that fuel courage and explore how we can apply them to our daily battles. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's the decision to act despite it. Benaiah's life demonstrates this truth in profound ways, showing that his bravery was rooted not in his physical strength or natural fearlessness, but in his deep trust in God. The timeless secret of courage lies in this reliance on a power greater than ourselves. Benaiah's story challenges us to reflect on how we respond to fear and how we can cultivate a faith-fueled courage to face life's challenges. When Benaiah faced the lion in the snowy pit, he wasn't acting recklessly or seeking glory. He likely knew the risk involved, but chose to trust in God's strength over his own limitations. The snow made the ground slippery, increasing the difficulty of the battle, yet he didn't let fear stop him. Similarly, when he faced the Egyptian giant with nothing but a staff, his actions were not a display of arrogance, but of faith. He believed that God was greater than any obstacle. These moments teach us that courage begins with perspective, choosing to focus on God's greatness instead of the size of our challenges. Benaiah's trust in God's sovereignty was the foundation of his courage. He understood that his life was in God's hands, and that no enemy, however powerful, could thwart God's plans. This belief empowered him to take bold actions, even when the odds were against him. Trusting in God's sovereignty doesn't mean ignoring fear. It means moving forward in faith, knowing that God is in control. For us, this might mean stepping into a new job opportunity despite uncertainty, having a difficult conversation we've been avoiding, or pursuing a calling that feels beyond our abilities. Courage is not about removing fear. It's about placing trust in God above that fear. Preparation was another key to Benaiah's courage. His victories weren't moments of luck. They were the result of years of training and spiritual growth. As one of David's mighty men, Benaiah refined his skills in combat, ensuring he was ready for any physical challenge. But he also cultivated his spiritual strength by grounding himself in God's word and promises. This dual preparation, practical and spiritual, teaches us that courage is cultivated over time. Whether it's studying scripture, developing skills, or seeking wise counsel, preparation equips us to face challenges with confidence that God will guide and sustain us. Another crucial aspect of Benaiah's courage was his obedience to God's call. His actions were not driven by personal ambition, but by a desire to honor God and serve his chosen leaders. True courage often involves stepping out in obedience, even when the path is unclear or unpopular. For example, taking a stand for integrity at work, stepping into a ministry role, or forgiving someone who has wronged us requires faith-filled obedience. Benaiah's life reminds us that courage isn't just about achieving great feats. It's about aligning our actions with God's will and trusting Him with the results. Benaiah's story also teaches us how to confront fear. His battles with the lion and the giant were undoubtedly terrifying, but he didn't allow fear to paralyze him. Instead, he relied on God's strength to overcome. Fear is a natural human response, but we don't have to let it control us. Overcoming fear starts with surrendering it to God through prayer and meditating on His promises. Surrounding ourselves with a supportive faith community and remembering past victories where God provided can also help us face today's challenges with confidence. Ultimately, Benaiah's courage wasn't about his own abilities. It was about his unwavering faith in God. His life challenges us to ask, where do we place our trust when we face fear? Do we rely on our own strength, or do we draw from the limitless power of God? Courage, as Benaiah's story reveals, is not about being fearless, it's about being faithful. When we trust God, prepare diligently, and step out in obedience, we can discover a courage that goes beyond anything we could achieve on our own. As we close this journey through Benaiah's story, let's reflect on the practical steps we can take to live with courage and faith in our own lives. What can we learn from his extraordinary journey? And how can we use these lessons to face the challenges ahead with boldness and trust in God? Benaiah's story is more than just a tale of bravery. It's a roadmap for navigating life's challenges with faith, courage, and purpose. His life shows us that true courage doesn't come from being fearless, but from trusting in a God who is greater than any obstacle. The question is, how will you apply these lessons in your life? What giants or lions are you facing today that require you to step forward with boldness and faith? Think about the challenges in your life right now. Are you wrestling with a tough decision, a broken relationship, or uncertainty about the future? Benaiah's victories remind us that we don't have to face these battles alone. The same God who empowered him to defeat lions and giants is ready to strengthen and guide you. But courage requires action. Maybe it's time to take that step of faith, starting a new job, pursuing a calling, or seeking reconciliation. What's holding you back? Are you ready to trust God enough to take the first step? The timeless secret of courage is simple yet profound. Trust in God and prepare yourself for the challenges ahead. Benaiah didn't rely on luck or coincidence. He was prepared physically and spiritually. You can do the same. Start by grounding yourself in Scripture, just as Benaiah likely drew strength from God's promises. Passages like, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go," can fortify your heart. Surround yourself with a supportive community of faith, seek God in prayer, and take practical steps to prepare for your battles. Courage isn't something we summon in the moment. It's cultivated through daily trust and preparation. Living with courage also means aligning our actions with God's will. Benaiah wasn't chasing glory. He was acting in obedience to God's plan. What areas in your life need realignment? Maybe it's prioritizing your relationship with God, taking a stand for integrity, or being faithful in a role you've been called to. Courage often means stepping into the unknown, trusting that God will meet you there. What step of obedience do you need to take today, even if it feels daunting? Finally, reflect on the legacy of courage you're building. Benaiah's life continues to inspire because his courage pointed to God's greatness, not his own. Imagine how your own acts of faith and courage could inspire those around you, your family, your friends, even your community. Let Benaiah's story remind you that you're never alone in your battles. God is with you, strengthening and equipping you to face whatever comes your way. As we end this journey through Benaiah's extraordinary life, take a moment to pray. Ask God for the courage to trust Him, the wisdom to prepare for your challenges, and the boldness to act in faith. If this message encouraged you, subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and share your story in the comments. Let's keep learning, growing, and facing life's challenges together, one step of faith at a time.